Jivarupa vijatate kaila samarpana. Swangi visheshava sarupe prakriti sparshana. Jivarupa vijatate kaila samarpana.
Swanga Vishesha Dasha Rupe Prakriti Spashana Jiva Rupa Vijatati Palasamana
Swanga Vishesha Bhakta Rupe Prakriti Spashana
Swanga Vishesha
Jiva Rupa Vijatate Vairasamapana
Jiva Rupa Vijatati Vairasamapana
Swanga visheshava bhasha rupe prakriti sparshana. Jivarupa vijatate kaila samarpana. Swanga vishesha abhasarupe. In the form of a specific shadow, Prakriti, the Lord glances over the material nature. Jiva Rupa, having the form of the spark-like living entities, who are parts and parcels. Bija, semen, tate, in that material nature. Kaila Samarpana, impregnated. Something just started buzzing all of a sudden. Ishan, could you have a look, please? To impregnate with the seeds of the living entities, the Lord himself does not directly touch the material energy, but by his specific functional expansion, he touches material energy. And thus, parcels are impregnated into material nature. Please repeat. To impregnate with the seeds of the living entities, the Lord himself does not directly touch the material energy, but by his specific functional expansion, he touches the material energy. And thus the living entities, who are his parts and parcels, are impregnated into material nature. Srila Prabhupada's purport. According to Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 15.7, Mamaivam Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Mana Sastanindriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. The word Prakriti Sparshana is explained in Caitanya Caritamrita in reference to the way the living entities come in contact with dull matter. The glancing is performed by Mahavishnu Sa Aikshata Lokan Nusrujita Iti. Aitareya Upanishad 111. In the conditioned stage, we are impregnated according to the bodily conception, that is, by sexual intercourse. But the Supreme Lord does not need sexual intercourse to impregnate. The impregnation is performed simply by his glance. This is also explained in the Brahma Samhita 532. Angani yasya sakalendriya vritimanti pashanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmaya sadujvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Govinda can impregnate simply by glancing. In other words, his eyes can work as his genitals. He does not need genitals to beget a child. Indeed, Krishna can beget any one of the living entities with any part of his body. The word Swanga Visheshabhasarupe, indicating the form by which the Lord begets the living entities in the material world, is explained herein. He is Lord Shiva. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Lord Shiva, who is another form of Mahavishnu, is like yogurt. Yogurt is nothing but milk, yet it is not milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is considered the father of this universe, and material nature is considered the mother. The father and mother are known as Lord Shiva and Goddess Durga. Together, Lord Shiva's genitals and the vagina of Goddess Durga are worshipped as the Shiva Linga. This is the origin of the material creation. Thus, Lord Shiva's position is between that of the living entity and that of the Supreme Lord. In other words, Lord Shiva is neither the Supreme Personality of Godhead nor a living entity. He is the form through which the Supreme Lord works to beget living entities within this material world. As yogurt is prepared when milk is mixed with a culture, the form of Lord Shiva expands when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in touch with material nature. The impregnation of material nature by the Father, Lord Shiva, is wonderful because at one time innumerable living entities are conceived. Bhago Jiva Sa Vigyeya Sa Chanantyaya Kalpate from Sutara Upanishad 5.9. These living entities are very, very small. Kishagra Shatta Bhagasya Shatamsa Sad Trishatmaka Jiva Shukshma Sarupayam Sankyatito Hi Chitkana. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts, and then take one of those parts and divide it again into 100 parts, that very fine division is the size of but one of the numberless living entities. They're all chitkana, the particles of spirit, not matter. The innumerable Brahmandas or universes come from the pores of the Lord's body, and innumerable living entities also come from the pores of the transcendental body of the Lord. This is the process of material creation. Without the living entities, material nature has no value. Both emanate from the pores of the transcendental body of Lord Mahavishnu. They are different energies. The material nature is explained as follows by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kam mano buddhir evacha hankara itiyamme bina prakriti ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Thus, the material elements also come from the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they are a different type of energy from the living entities. Although the living entities also come from Lord's body, they are categorized as a superior energy. Apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahabaho yayidam darite jagat. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Bhagavad Gita 7.5. The inferior energy, matter, cannot act without the superior energy. All these things are very clearly explained in the Vedas. The materialistic theory that life develops from matter is incorrect. Life and matter come from the supreme living entity, therefore being the source of both. That supreme living entity, Krishna, is described in the Vedanta Sutra as Janmadyasya Yataha 1.1. Or the original source of everything, Sarva Karana Karam. This is further explained in the following verse. Om Gyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Garam Yakripatamam Bande Shri Indinitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadigaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Verse once again. Swanga Vishesha Basarupe Prakriti Sparshana Jiva Rupa Bijatate Kaila Samarpana. To impregnate with the seeds of the living entities, the Lord himself does not directly touch material energy, but by his specific functional expansion, he touches material energy, and thus living entities, whose parts and parcels are impregnated into the material nature. So we understand that Krishna's senses are interchangeable. What does that mean? Anybody? Does that mean that he can take his ears and he can unscrew them and put them where his eyes are and put his eyes where his ears are? He could if he wanted to. Krishna can do anything. And Bhakti Vaibhav Maharaj said the first thing he learned on the Bhakti program was that Krishna can do anything. Who can say no, you can't do that, Krishna? That would mean they would be Krishna, wouldn't it? So what does it mean that his senses are interchangeable? He's not like some kind of modular god that things just kind of swap around. What does it mean? Kartikeya, you had your hand up. Yeah. Because Krishna's body is not like our body. There's a verse in the Ishupanishad, I think it's Saparigat Jukamakayam Avranam Ashnavidam Shudam Papavidam. Apapavidam means pure and uncontaminated, but it means without veins. So the Lord is described as prophylactic. That means that he doesn't have any veins in his body. If you cut our body open, you'll see muscles, veins, bones, etc. But Krishna's body is non-different from himself. Our body and ourself are different, so this is a big difference. Although we try to, in our false ego means where it becomes God's competitor in this world. We're trying to be the enjoyer. We like to also act as if we're the well-wisher, as if we can bestow some kind of benedictions on people that's within our grasp to give mercy. Yeah, we can be merciful, but it's not that we can take the place of the Supreme Lord. Sometimes this living entity is liberated into the impersonal Brahman. And Srila Prabhupada explains that because a living entity by nature is active, then they have to once again find some activity. And they generally, Prabhupada explains, they fall down into altruism and philanthropy. So that means it's already a fallen condition, but people think altruism and philanthropy is actually something amazing. But actually it's considered a fallen condition according to the real status of the living entity. So of course it's better to do good than to do bad. But the real thing is actually we have no connection with this material world. However, in this conditioned state of mind, then we are controlled by the material modes of nature, and we're struggling with our senses. So our senses, they're not like Krishna's. So if at prasadam time today or the Sunday feast, we say, okay, because you're part and parcel of Krishna, that means you must be the same with Krishna. So we're just going to have the feast lined up. You can come up with your plate, but you can just enjoy and you can fill your plate up and you can set it in front of you and you can just enjoy it by looking at it. Is everyone going to be happy with that? Because we don't have that potency. Or if a male and female come together and they think, okay, let's have a child, and they just look at each other. 9 months later, they're still not going to be a child. So we play by different rules. Krishna plays by different rules. And our imitation of Krishna is actually just is quite poor, really. And we see in the poster at the back of the temple, Mahavishnu, universe is emanating from the pores in his body. And as God's competitors, what kind of universes emanate from our pores? It's some kind of like germs, sweat. So Srila Prabhupada explains that this material body is an embarrassment to the living entity, because the living entity is actually much more glorious, and they belong to a different nature. But with bodily identification, we identify with this material world as our home. But if we identify with it as our home, then in a few short years, a few short decades, then we become upset because we get evicted from it. Just like if an eviction notice comes, if the money's run out in your bank and you can't pay your rent, eviction notice will come and you have to leave. So similarly, that time comes to all of us, that our time is up and we have to leave this body. So for a devotee, leaving the body is not a problem, because engaging in service in this body or in the spiritual world is the same, because service, transcendental devotional service, is what we're doing here and what we do in the spiritual world. There's this Christian prayer, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So this is a bit like, if you want to become, if you want iron to become fire, then it has to be in the fire, has to associate with fire, and then it takes on the qualities of fire. So if we want to go to the spiritual world, then we engage in the activities that they engage in the spiritual world, beginning with hearing and chanting, etc. And in this way, our consciousness becomes spiritualized. And then simply this material body is a facility to serve Krishna in. So Krishna, he is always above the modes of material nature, but in order to interact with the mode of ignorance, then he takes the form of Lord Shiva. And that's explained in the Prana, that milk and yogurt are the same but also different. With milk, you can make yogurt, you can do so many things. And yogurt is nothing but milk, but also it doesn't have the same potential as milk. So similarly, we read in the Nectar of Devotion that Lord Shiva has more qualities than the ordinary Jivatma, but he doesn't have all the qualities of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu. But he is specifically the Lord's energy, which deals with the modes of material nature. So when the time arrives for manifesting the material cosmic manifestation, then the Lord casts his glance over the Mahatattva, and the living entities are then come into being again. So it's explained, I think it's in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that after annihilation of the material world, then the Mahatattva, which comprises the sum total of all material energies, and the living entities who are still in the material universe at that time, they're placed into a state of suspended animation. And then when the time comes again, then everything is manifest according to its own karma. So that's quite a bit of accounting, isn't it? You just imagine, okay, there's so many trillions, billions, unlimited amounts of numbers of living entities, and they all have their specific karma, and it all comes back into play again. So Srila Prabhupada explains that just like sometimes the boss, people complain that the boss is never in, he's always away playing golf. That's a good boss. I read one book about management once. I think Shiva Ramanujan, he directed me to read a book called The 1 Minute Manager. There's a series of those. And the guy who was writing the book, he was relating a story of when he was being trained up in management, and he was allowing himself to be so busy that he couldn't finish at his finishing time, and he had to come in at the weekends because it's like they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So he was so busy, and people, because he was good, then people were just like, they were all dumping things on him, and they were off, at the weekend, and the boss also, he was off, and he understood that this is just to do everything yourself is not actually the success of the boss. The success of the boss was that he had everybody doing everything, and everything was still working under control, but he was away enjoying himself. So this is Krishna. Everything is going on in the material world. He delegates. He doesn't just delegate to everybody. He doesn't say, okay, back to space case, you can be Lord Brahma. There has to be some qualification for delegation as well. Not just like, oh, just delegate to me. Sometimes people want to be delegated, but you have to kind of earn that delegation. Otherwise, sometimes what it means is they want to be unaccountable. But someone who is properly able to be delegated, they're accountable. It's the opposite, actually. That way, the person who's delegating to them, they can trust, okay, this person's accountable. They'll make the best effort here to do the right thing. So Krishna delegates. He manifests himself in different ways. He empowers living entities, makes so many arrangements for us to enjoy separately from him. And if somebody wanted nothing to do with you, then when you make lots of big arrangements for them, you'd think, good, don't want to see you again, you don't exist, as far as I'm concerned. But Krishna's not like that, because we are his eternal parts and parcels, and he never forgets us. So this material world is a place where we come to forget Krishna. And he gives us that facility. Well, he's so detached that I think, okay, if you want to forget me, here's a situation you can forget me in. But you won't be happy and you'll come back anyway. So therefore, Brahmanda Brahmatikanya Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. When the living entity has wandered through all the different material situations, different bodies, different planets, different universes, they've looked everywhere and they haven't found what they lost. That relationship with Krishna, they try to have that relationship with Krishna, but through the material energy, the inferior energy. Srila Prabhupada explains it's an incompatible situation. The living entity is superior to dull matter, but we're trying to enjoy the dull matter, and we're actually, as Prabhupada says, Maya means we take our suffering to be enjoyment, and the more we try to lord over matter, the more we become entangled in the complexities of Maya. So in first canto, Srila Prabhupada explains that the material world has been provided for the living entities to try to enjoy separately from Krishna, and in doing so they become frustrated and they turn back to Krishna. So this is the process that happens. So this is why we're here. We've tried, we became frustrated, disillusioned, and by Krishna's mercy, by the mercy of the devotees, perhaps, maybe we met a devotee, we've seen a chanting party, and we start to become awakened to spiritual life, and we start to question. Or after many births and deaths, one who's actually knowledge surrenders unto me, Krishna says. So we start to inquire, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, that what is this life? What's it for? What's this world? We've been promised this and that, but I'm not finding it to be that. Maya is very expert at advertising. Atokshapur used to be in advertising. He was studying art and advertising, and was saying that we when you're advertising a product, you don't show that it's been consumed. You show they're just about to consume it. Like you paint a picture like it's a really hot day, sweat's dripping down the guy's face, and he's just about to take a drink from a cold bottle of beer, and everyone thinks, "Well, that's for me. I need that relief." So the promising relief and the promising enjoyment. So it's that promise. And Maya is very good at making these promises, but it's an illusion. But Krishna says, Janma Kamatame Devyam, Evam Yovati Tatpataha. He promises that if we become acquainted with his appearance and activities, if we understand that his appearance and his activities are not the normal appearance activities of a person in the material world, then we don't take birth in this material world again. So that kind of promise, we don't get let down on. So in our efforts to try to enjoy, then we become entangled in so many complex situations in the material world. And finally, we realize that actually, if we're lucky, actually, we realize that we're simply insignificant. Here it's described that the living entity is, if you take the tip of a hair and divide it into 100 parts, and then again take one of those parts and divide it again, that's the living entity's size. In other words, it's atomic. It's so small you cannot see it. But somehow or another, we're thinking we're very important. But if we're lucky, we can understand that we're insignificant. And it's interesting how the false ego works. There was one devotee approached Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, and he was probably in his, I don't know what he was experiencing actually, but he said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm your most fallen disciple. Maybe he was thinking he was being humble. But it's interesting how we try to get some credit from even our fallen condition. I'm the most fallen. Prabhupada said, actually, you're the most nothing. You're simply insignificant. And that's the reality of it. We want to be the most something. It's like, oh yeah, we compare scars, like, oh, I got this scar when I was fighting back in high school. Well, that's nothing. Look at this one. I got this one. So it becomes a contest, or if like, oh, I had COVID. Oh yeah, I had COVID for 3 days. Oh, I had it for 3 weeks. Oh, that's nothing. I had it for 3 months. We're competing to see who's the most miserable. We've always got to be the best at something, or even if it's the best at being the worst. But the fact of the matter, everything which is happening to us is just passing through, and we are sitting here just experiencing the reactions within this body. However, when we engage in devotional service, we engage wholeheartedly from the moment we get up to the moment we take rest in engaging our mind in Krishna's service, either by hearing, chanting, serving with our whatever facilities we have. Then even in our sleep, then we dream of service. If something is on your mind a lot, then sometimes it comes up in your sleep and it troubles you and it wakes you up. So if your mind is absorbed in Krishna throughout the whole day, Krishna's service, and Krishna doesn't mean to see that while we're chopping the potatoes, we have to be trying to think of Krishna's pastimes, because then your mind's off the job, you might cut your finger off or something. So we have to see everything in relation to Krishna. Why are we cutting the potato? Because it's going to be offered to Krishna and then served to the devotees. So we see the relevance in it, not that we just simply have to have some kind of meditation where we're in samadhi. It's called seva samadhi. That our determination is fixed in whatever we're actually doing at that time. And that seva or devotional service is termed as devotional service because it is authorized. So we can't just do anything and consider it's authorized. It's like, say someone decides, I think onion pakoras are quite good, we should just offer them to the deities. So if one of the cooks did that, then it'd probably be the last day of the cooking up here, wouldn't it? So we can't just do whatever we like and consider it devotional service. It's if you love someone, then you don't just impose something on them that they don't like. Then you're testing to see if they love you, but maybe they love you less because you're offering something they don't want. So if you love someone or you want to learn to love someone, you want to find out more about them. If you were going to meet an important person, you'd want to find out more about them. Like sometimes we get some dignitary visiting the temple, like a government minister. And what's the first thing we do? We look up and find out a bit about them, find a bit about their background. Okay, their interest. What's their interests, which may connect with the interests we have here. And then you take them to that, you make that connection. You build a relationship like that. So we find out what is Krishna's interests. What does Krishna want to see from us? What does he not want from us? And then that's the path we follow. We're trying to put something else on that. So how do we know? Because it's coming from parampara. Lord Balaram is the first expansion of the Lord. He's showing everyone how to serve. He's known as Adiguru. So, and everyone is representing that line, who's coming from that line, the Guru Parampara, and they're showing us how to serve. So in this way, the living entity who has been conditioned since time immemorial, when they connect with the pure devotee and they're engaged in authorized devotional service, then very quickly they're re-established in their original constitutional position. So while in the material world, we hear so many different theories which are solely intended to bewilder the living entity and keep them in the material world, such as life comes from matter. So Prabhupada explains that sometimes you'll see scorpions appearing to take birth from rice. If you have piles of rice, sometimes you'll see scorpions just emerging from that as if they just kind of some combination caused them to emerge from the rice. But what is it? What's the truth of the matter? Katika is laughing. You must know the answer. How come the scorpions come from the rice? Scorpion lays its eggs in the rice, and the conditions are suitable for that. And how come the scorpion knows to lay its eggs in the rice? Why would it think put them in the rice? How would it even know what rice is? You go to your scorpion school and they teach you, okay, when time comes to laying eggs, you've got to find a big mound of rice, then you go and lay your eggs there. Scorpion parampara. The super soul within the heart tells living entities. How come the turtle lays its eggs and then it goes and meditates on them to hatch them from some distance? How does it know to do that? Is that just by chance? But it's like, okay, let's try a million different ways to hatch these eggs. The super soul is within the heart of all the living entities. And all the wonderful things which are going on in this world are the arrangements of the Lord. But the envious living entities, they don't want to give God credit. They want to take that credit for themselves. Or they'd rather have nobody have any credit. Well, there's no cause behind this. And this is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Thousands of years ago, Krishna said that the demoniac think there's no cause to this world other than sex life. They think simply the only cause of living entities being produced is a combination of male and female, that's all. So this is such a blind point of view. But as we were saying recently, we had His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Govinda Maharaj here, who's a disciple of Swarup Damodar Maharaj. And the famous morning walks he had with Srila Prabhupada discussing scientific theories. The book Life Comes from Life was produced of that. And I strongly suggest that everybody reads that because it's very common sense answers to these big scientific theories, which everybody's gobbling up like it's Sunday feast. Sometimes you hear on the radio they're talking about something, and they're just speaking as if evolution's a fact. So we speak about it as if it's a fact in such a way that anybody who opposes it, they're afraid to oppose it because then they may be seen as being a crank, or they may dig up a bigger challenge than they can cope with. But it's not a fact. And no matter how much they present it, it will never become a fact. So Prabhupada says here in the end of the purport that life and matter come from the Supreme Living Entity. Therefore, being the source of both, that Supreme Living Entity Krishna is described as Janma Jasya Yataha, the original source of everything, the cause of all causes. So it's interesting that the materialists, the scientists, sometimes they have this smarmy attitude. They say, oh, well, if God created everything, then who created God? But you can say, okay, well, same applies to your Big Bang theory. The Big Bang was the cause of everything. What caused the Big Bang? If there was nothing there in the beginning, then why would there be any motion or momentum to create such a Big Bang? Something must have happened. What would cause that to happen? And what would cause that to happen? So this is already answered in the Brahma Samhita of many, many thousands of years. I mean, that is, Brahma Samhita is actually, I guess his prayers would have been millions or billions of years ago. But it doesn't matter how long ago, whether it was last week or last Kalpa, it's the fact remains the same. The truth is always the truth. That's why the transcendental Vedic literatures are always relevant, because the truth is always relevant. It's not like, okay, the sun's out today. It was the same sun it was here yesterday, same one as 100 years ago. I'm getting bored with this sun. Can't we get a new one? You always rely on the sun. And that is a constant. And the truth of Krishna's words are always a constant. So therefore, when Lord Brahma says, Ishwar Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Radhya Govinda Sarvakarma Karnam, when he says this, then he's saying that Krishna is the cause of all causes. He's the origin of all. Now, if there's anyone else who fits that description, when we hear the description of Krishna, his qualities, pastimes, etc., and the way he has created this whole world, if we hear a better version of that, then we could consider it. But so far, there's no better version being given, so this is the best version we have. Someone mentioned that to Prabhupada, and he said, you have a better God? So if someone has a better God, then they can say, okay, yeah, Krishna is this, but this is the real God. But nobody's been able to say it because it doesn't exist. So the potencies of the Lord are inconceivable. And that is, we try to conceive to some extent with our limited faculties. But we cannot capture, it's not that we can capture a conception of the Lord. That would mean that the Lord is subject to our conceptions. But if we want to understand Lord, then it's through revelation, it's through Bhakti Yoga. Then the Lord reveals himself. Tesham satatayaktanam bhajatam prabhakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam priyamti. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. We don't achieve it simply by our own endeavour, but our sincere endeavour can attract the attention of the Lord. Even though Krishna is all attractive, he's attracted by the devotees' pure effort to serve. And then the Lord will reveal himself. So for those who demand God to reveal himself, then he's there every day, but they can't see it. And that demand is why they can't see it. In the fourth canto, it's explained that Krishna reserves the right to not reveal himself to casual or inauthentic devotees, what to speak of gross materialists. So the picture which is painted of God in some conceptions even of theism is not always the picture of someone who's all loving and who has the softest of hearts, etc., but as someone who is jealous and who will smite you and someone to be afraid of. So that aspect may be there. We see in the universal form, then there's some terrible manifestations there which are frightening to Arjuna. But Arjuna, he wants to see the form of the Lord, which is actually his most treasured form, the two-armed form of the Lord, his original form. So this is such a great benediction that the devotees of ISKCON are given access to enter into the association of Lord with that original form through this process of Krishna consciousness. So therefore, because the Lord is surrounded by loving devotees, wonderful pastimes, and the Lord's abode of Vrindavan, sometimes people go to Vrindavan if they don't have the right mood, they just see it as being a dusty, dirty place. But when a devotee goes, they don't see that. They see this is the abode of the Lord. This is where the Lord has his pastimes. This is where the Lord always resides, and they feel it. When they go there, their chanting is improved, their hearing is improved. I was once in Vrindavan, and there was one chap there was doing some kind of documentary, and he actually had to leave. He couldn't stay there because of the flies and the poverty as he's seen it. He was from quite an affluent background, but as devotees live quite simply. And when we see some sadhu or some poor person in Vrindavan, we think they're actually more fortunate than us because they're Brijbasis, they're living there, they're the Lord's people. But someone else with materialistic vision comes along and think, oh, these people are so poor, I can't handle being here. The flies, the poverty, and then they just go away with a disturbed mind. They don't see it. They don't see Vrindavan. But Srila Prabhupada has very kindly opened our eyes so that we can begin to see Vrindavan. And these different temples, which have been manifest throughout the Western world, or throughout the whole world, these are considered to be oases of the spiritual world. From here, we go out to try to bring people to the temple or to take the temple mood, temple atmosphere, the Vrindavan atmosphere into their life. And to show them that everything they're looking for in this material world can be found within the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and within devotional service. That which you're looking for, they will never find in the material world because it's not there. It's actually of the spiritual world. So this becomes our engagement as much as not being considered about our own liberation. The saying is that when you help someone get to the top of a hill, you automatically get there yourself. So by acts of compassion, then an act of compassion, primarily in the Krishna conscious movement, is to bring people to Krishna consciousness and bring Krishna to them. And by doing that, in spiritual life, when you give something, then your stock doesn't diminish, it increases. So by sharing Krishna consciousness, then actually the equation is that They increase and we increase. So I'll just stop there at this point. Is there any questions or comments? That's cool. I don't know that. As much as Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, well, I understand that demigods cannot give liberation. Only the spiritual master can award that. And as according to Brahma Samhita, then there is Mahesh Dham. That is not of. That's not. So there's Durga Dham, or Devi Dham, Mahesh Dham, and then Haridam. So Haridam is Vaikuntha. So I understand, unless anyone else has any further knowledge on that. What? Mm-hmm. Yeah, different functions. Yeah, that's partly explained in the fifth canto, where the different rudras are manifested. I haven't tried to understand too much about Lord Shiva's position, I must admit. So I know very little other than what is mentioned in the Brahma Samhita regarding his position in relation to Lord Vishnu, that he is Vaishnavan Shambhu, he's the greatest Vaishnava, he's always meditating on the Lord, always chanting his names. Now, if but the question is an interesting question, though, thanks for asking, because if Devi Dham is Durga Dham, or the material world, and above that is Mahesh Dham, then where is that situated? Does anybody know? And then there's Haridam, which is Vaikuntha. So is that some kind of in between? So I can't recall anything specifically about that. Anybody got anything on that? So that's your homework for next week. You can see what you can find on that. And come back and tell us, okay? And then we'll all know. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? It's a very good question. It's a matter of being authorized, so we need to know. So there has to be a certain amount of faith to begin with, because if we say, well, I can't put my faith in anything, then we're never going to find any path. So we did quote a verse, Brahmanda Konya Bhagavani Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. When the living entities wandered throughout so many different situations, this life, previous lives, and ultimately when they desire to know what is the absolute truth, then the Lord within their heart will direct them to the Guru, a bona fide Guru, and the Guru will then direct them towards Krishna. But we need to know what is Guru. This is important, and we need to know what is the right path. It's not that yatamat tatupat, not that all paths lead to the same goal, because if you came from Glasgow on the minibus, but if there was a minibus parked next to us which was going to Aberdeen, you thought minibus, white minibus must be the same, I'll just go on that bus. And then you end up in Aberdeen, you think, okay, where's Caritamrita? Oh, you should have gone on that bus. Well, but it's a bus, what's the difference? Doesn't matter. Any bus will do. So not any path is the same. If you, after today's program, if you go down to the bus stop, and there's the X74 bus goes north to Glasgow or south to Dumfries. If you think, oh, X74, this way, that way, what's it matter? It will matter. So these kind of pseudo-transcendental statements are made by people in ignorance. With oh, yatumat tatapat, any path you do, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. Now that's a misinterpretation of Krishna's words, where Krishna says that everyone follows my paths in all respects. That's because Krishna has created everything, and then the choice is up to us. So everyone follows one path, but they don't all lead to the same place. So if we do one thing that has one result, and if we do another thing that has a different result, so that's mentioned in the Ishopanishad. Vijam Chavijam Tayas Tadvido Sabha. I can't remember the Sanskrit for it, but basically, one has to engage in the culture of knowledge. But if we engage in the culture of ignorance, then that's a different result. So cultivating knowledge is one result, cultivating ignorance is a different result. So we refer to Bhagavad Gita. If we're looking to be successful in the path of bhakti, in the path of bhakti yoga, then the authority for that is Krishna and Bhagavad Gita. And there's so many verses there which direct us on the path. So first of all, he says, he doesn't say anything. Arjuna says it. Caitanya dosho pata subhava pachami pramdama samidachita. That now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. I'm your disciple and a soul. So prior to that, the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna was friendly. That was a rasa they had. But when Arjuna says he wanted to see Krishna as his guru, then Krishna stopped the friendly talks and started directing him. But it took the Arjuna, and it takes us also, that we become bewildered. This is the nature of the material world. It bewilders us. We're trying to be happy. We're promised happiness. And we're doing all the right things, but we're not getting what it says we're supposed to be getting. So then Krishna, first of all, instructs him, you're mourning for that which is not worthy of grief, asochanam vasocastvam. You're not the body, you're a spirit and soul. First lesson is that you're not the body. The body is temporary. He explains all that. And the soul, that is you, that is eternal, and he explains the nature of the soul. And then so that Arjuna can further understand, he says, Tadvide, Pranipatena Pariprashina Sevya, Predikshanti Gyanam, Gyaninastapadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. So we render service unto him, inquire from him submissively. So inquiring, but not just inquiring submissively, not challengingly, and rendering service. And the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he's seen the truth. So this is the value of parampara, or disciplic succession. Just like if one is interested in becoming a brain surgeon, then they would try to find someone who can teach them about that. It's a very important and potentially dangerous job if you don't learn properly. And if you're going for an operation, say you had a tumor on your brain or something, then you want to know that the person's actually got credentials. And if he says, well, I did a few videos on YouTube, so I think I'll be okay, and experimented in a couple of cats. You say, well, I think I'll look for someone else, thanks. So what's the person's qualifications? So there are qualifications of a guru, there's qualifications of a disciple. So simply pray to Krishna that that you can follow that path that he's offering. He's directing us. Read Bhagavad Gita. Also, chant Hare Krishna regularly, because when we chant, our consciousness becomes purified, and then we understand the Bhagavad Gita as it's to be understood. So Prabhupada translated Bhagavad Gita as it is, not with some personal motivation or interpretation, but simply as it is. And Prabhupada is representing the Guru Parampara. His credentials are his spiritual master had a spiritual master, and spiritual master all the way back to Krishna. His succession is there. But if someone just shows up and says, I'm a guru, you say, okay, who's your guru? What's their credentials? Who was their guru? Which parampara? Just like when you go to visit some temples in India, they say, what's your gotra? If you go for a job, they'll say, oh, what's your qualifications? They don't just accept your word for it, do they? So this is how it works. So in other words, authorized to become authorized. If you're giving something by the authorized person, then it has correct value and it will connect you. So just chant Hare Krishna, read Bhagavad Gita, engage in some devotional service, then gradually it will be revealed more and more as the heart becomes purified. Or the conditions which are surrounding our pure consciousness become to peel off. Then that original knowledge which is already within us will just be uncovered again. Okay, we'll stop there. I think we've got on a bit longer than we should have. Let's go and Guru the key. Shri Prabhupada the key. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande Haribo.